Hi East Bears. Today we're going to go over how to harvest fish out of our aquaponics tanks. We have several objectives, so just pay attention and we'll get there shortly.
Objective: how to hold a living fish.
Hold the fish horizontally with your hand behind the gill plate. Placing your fingers behind the gill plate or the flaps on either side of the fish's head will typically give you a secure grip. Be very careful not to touch or insert your fingers into the actual gills, which are delicate organs necessary for the fish's survival. Smaller fish such as crappie, bluegill, or tilapia can usually be held with one hand. If the fish is big enough that it can be held with two hands, it's best to do so. This will keep the weight of the fish from damaging its bones or internal organs. Holding a large fish with one hand can put dangerous amounts of pressure on its jaw or gill plate. Keep one hand behind the gill plate and the other under its belly. This is especially applicable for largemouth bass, catfish, and carp. Many fish, such as bluegill and tilapia, have dorsal fins or fins on their back that can cut into your hand if you are not prepared. If you are holding a small fish with one hand, slide your hand from the front of the fish to the back to smooth the dorsal fin down under your palm so that you can safely grip the sides of the fish.
Objective: find the mass and length of each fish.
Okay, so here you'll see we are in the aquaponics tank trying to scoop up some fish. Once we get some fish scooped up in our nets, we take them over to our scale and we'll place the fish on the scale. We'll take a reading off of that scale to see how much mass that fish has. We'll type that, or we'll write that down. Then we'll look at the length. We used a little measuring tape to find the length from the lip to the tail. And then we wrote that down in our data table as well. And here is us doing it live.
Objective: find the gender or the sex of each fish.
Aside from also looking at the weight and the length of the fish, we did take a look at the sex of each fish too. We wanted to know if what we had in the tanks gave us a good environment for those fish to reproduce and make more babies. So you'll see on this diagram there are two different types of genitalia that we're looking at. On the left, you'll see that that's the male genitalia. You'll see that there's a dot at the very end. And then on the right is the female. You'll see that there is a slit called an oviduct where the eggs actually leave the body of the female. We then, of course, wrote that down as a point of data in our data table.
Objective: how to safely store fish for future processing.
So since we were going to process these fish for future consumption, we wanted to put them in a place where we could store them for an extended amount of time so that we could get to that processing the next day. So what we did here and what you can see here is we put these fish on ice. We put them in a 5-gallon bucket full of ice and then put that bucket in the refrigerator overnight. And by the time we got back the next morning, those fish had been dispatched and were ready for butchering.
Objective: count the number of fish living in the tank.
So an important part of having your own aquaponics system is knowing how many fish you actually have. Once these fish start making babies, it's really difficult to have a good count for each tank, especially since you can't really see through the water very well in a lot of the systems that we have. So the only way that we were able to really tell how many fish we had in this tank was because we were doing some work on these tanks already, and we were going to empty the water out in this tank, ensuring that we knew just how many we had. We had 11 fish in this tank. So there you have it. Those are the several different things that we do when we are harvesting fish. Next week I will have a video of how to butcher a fish, and until then, I hope you have a great time.